Well, the introduction of electronic invoicing and evaluator for exporters and importers by the Central Bank of Nigeria is a proposal that has raised a lot of concerns. And one of those concerns is the Center for Promotion of Private Enterprise. The Chief Executive Officer joins us now, Dr. Mudu Yusuf, to tell us why he is so concerned about this e-invoicing and e-evaluator. Good morning, Dr. Yusuf.
Good morning.
Thank you. Good to have you as usual. So the e-voicing is a system where you're supposed to have business-to-business invoices digitally paired, and this is supposed to bring a lot of cleansing to the system. Maybe you should explain to us first, help us to understand, you know, this system, e-invoicing and e-evaluator, how it's supposed to work and why you are concerned.
Well, thank you very much. I think the concern of the Central Bank of Nigeria is about issues of over-invoicing, because I think there are reports, or they have, seen indications of some people trying to move foreign exchange out of this country illegitimately using the platform of trade. And in the process, a number of people possibly over-invoice. They increase the value of what they are buying so that they can ship out a lot more foreign exchange. And of course, that concern is justified. That is why the CBN has gone ahead to introduce this e-invoicing. And the whole idea is to normalize the values that people bring forward, to make sure that those values are reasonable and they are also proportionate to whatever goods they are bringing in. So in the process, the CBN has now introduced a band, 2.5%, plus or minus, above or below which any transaction will not be authorized by the CBN in the form of Form M. In other words, if the CBN has established a value, which is a benchmark price, if your price is 2.5% above it, or 2.5 below it, it will not be approved. That is the whole idea. The same thing applies for exports. So the whole idea is to checkmate malpractices in the process of people trying to take out foreign exchange illegitimately. But the concern that we have, because this is about valuation, the concern that we have first is about the pricing flexibility. Sometimes as a business person, it is possible for you to get a very good bargain in terms of pricing. You can have a better bargain if you're an exporter, a better bargain in terms of getting a higher value for your exports. So if your price is now above the benchmark of the CBN,
then you will lose out.
Then that transaction will not happen. And again, as an importer, you can have a very good bargain to lower the price of the value of your imports.
Maybe get more quantity out.
Yes, either more quantity out or based on relationship. There's also geographical differentiation in pricing. You cannot compare the prices you get from Europe and all of that to what you get from China. There are also issues of grade, depending on what quality of things you are bringing in.
The goods.
So all of these things will affect the pricing. And once this pricing falls below or above the benchmark that the CBN has authorized, that transaction will not happen.
Okay, but
so the concern is that is not sustainable.
So what do you propose? I mean, because even from your explanation, there is a challenge, which is people trying to take advantage of the system, to get foreign exchange out. So from your perspective, what should be done, to deal with that challenge?
Now, the point we are making is that first, statutorily, the responsibility of valuation belongs to the Nigeria Customs Service. And the Nigeria Customs Service have a whole department on valuation. They have the structure, they have the machinery, they have the network.
But they're perhaps not functioning well. That is why the CBN is stepping.
No, that is not a reason to go and set up a parallel body. Because if you continue to run the system this way, the whole system will be replete of so many institutions that you have to deal with. The business community is already overburdened by too many compliance and regulatory issues in the international trade arena. Too many institutions, too many overlapping institutions, too many challenges in terms of processes, too many documentations, too many even issues of corruption and extortion. So this burden is already overwhelming. So the point we are making is that if you have a state institution, first, that has the statutory responsibility for this, if they are not doing it well, please collaborate with them. They are all agencies of government. The Customs is an agency of government. The CBN is an agency of government. They have a common objective to ensure that there is proper and appropriate value for whatever products bring. And again, some of the challenges that is faced in the business community is that whereas this customs is always accusing importers of undervaluation or under-invoicing because they don't want to pay the right duty. You know, the objective, primary objective, at least as far as the Nigeria custom is concerned, is revenue generation.
Should it be that? That's another conversation.
It's another conversation. You know, so they often accuse the importers of undervaluation or under-invoicing. Yeah. Because they want to evade duties. So right from the point of issuing of PAR, which is the pre-assessment, pre-arrival assessment report, this is a document that indicates how much duty you should pay. You begin to run into challenges. Even when you get the PAR, when you get to reports, there are all manner of queries. Right from the valuation to the CIU, to the FOU, to the strike force, all manner of queries, all around issues of either under declaration, under invoicing, or wrong classification. So it's a lot of rigor. So the point I'm making is that if you have all those systems in place, of course, there are likely to be gaps. There is no system that is perfect. Rather than set up a parallel institution, which will compound the problem of red tape and bureaucracy, and possibly even extortion in the international trade process, let the CBN collaborate with the Nigeria Customs Service to identify the gaps that exist and let them fix it at that point.
And this
so
is
that
why
they can save the business community the added burden.
Because this is why because in your release, you also talked about the high cost of trade.
Yes, high cost of trade. You see, when the DG of WTO, our own Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, addressed the ministerial retreat, midterm review that was done a few months ago, even the president was in attendance. And the point she made, and she must be speaking from the point of a well-informed person, is that the trade cost in Africa is far higher than what you have in the rest of the world. And even in Nigeria, the trade cost is even higher than the African average. No, that's an indication of the challenges that the business community is facing as far as international trade process is concerned. It ranges from issues of documentation, valuation, the logistics in and out of the port, the challenges with the terminal operators, challenges with shipping companies, issues of demurrage, and even in the import tariff. In addition to that, you even have quite a number of policies around FX that is having a very significant effect on trade. So even for the WTO to acknowledge the fact that trade cost is very high, and these things hurt investment. The government has been talking about growing investment. The government has been talking about ease of doing business.
Diversification.
Diversification, creating jobs. It is this investor that will deliver these things. If the environment is too hostile and too difficult for them, they will not be able to deliver it. So that is the spirit in which we are asking for a review.
Well, right now it's been suspended by
Well, happily, the House of Representatives, through a resolution, has a motion advising the CBN to suspend it. As we speak, it has not been effective yet.
It's supposed to be effective from the 1st of this month.
From the 1st of January. And other stakeholders have also raised concerns about it. The Manufacturers Association have raised concern. The Lagos Chamber of Commerce has raised concern. The Association of Freight Forwarders and all these people, operators in the post, all of them have raised concern. And all of these things also underscore the importance of stakeholder engagement.
Just before you go into that,
Yes.
Dr. Yusuf, I've spoken to a lot of people who are involved in import and export and manufacturing, and the picture that they paint when it comes to dealing with getting goods out of the country, or even getting it into the country, is a complicated one. Isn't there a way? I know that I also spoke to someone who said their company is a one-stop shop. So if you want to export, maybe you go to them, they help you do, all the legwork and all that. Is there no way to simplify this process? Must we go through, all of this?
Well, it's a very big challenge. And I know that even the government is concerned about it. Recall that we have seen series of presidential task force around this Apapa port gridlock. I know that the Ease of Doing Business Office, that's PEBEC, has also been trying to reform the whole system. There's a proposal around what is called a single window, which will remove this human interface, and reduce all this documentation. There are proposals to also introduce the use of scanners, which is using technology. Rather than this physical examination of cargo, all those proposals are on the table. But the speed of implementation and the fact that there are also elements in the system that are resistant to change because they are major beneficiaries of the status quo.
And these elements cannot be weeded out. I mean, they're so powerful that...
That is why we are also calling on government to demonstrate the political will to deal with these issues of reforming the entire ecosystem of our international trade process. Because you have infrastructure issues, you have institutional issues, you have regulatory issues, you have policy issues. Sometimes we even have foreign exchange issues.
Yeah,
all of this is affecting trade. And for an economy to perform optimally, you need trade. And trade is not just about going to import something to sell. It's also about exports.
Exactly.
It's about bringing things that even support even the manufacturing sector. They need equipment, they need some things. It's about getting the country to also plug into the global value chain, which is one very good way for this economy to prosper. It's not just about looking inwards. It's not just about building a wall around ourselves. It's also about connecting to the global value chain. If you don't get it right with this ecosystem around international trade, there's no way that can happen. So it should be a major priority of government.
Yeah, and you also talked about, I mean, not just you, I mean, it seems to be common knowledge, compromise in the system.
Yes.
So, palms have to be settled in the midst. We have the customs, we have the different agencies, and unfortunately, the issue of this, getting the representatives of these agencies to just do their job is proving to be a bit difficult. And so they bring a regulator, and even the regulator is supposed to be watching over the other agencies, also compromising. So it seems like a web that cannot be...
Well, these are issues of, these are institutional issues, which borders a lot on corruption. And for you to deal with corruption, I think in our system, there is too much emphasis on policing. Okay. Trying to catch people who are corrupt. But, there are policies that can also help you to eliminate corruption. Or maybe, there are systems.
Or maybe because some of these agencies have been placed as revenue-making agencies instead of, normally regulating activities to get the system working.
Well, apart from that, if you are even revenue-making agency or revenue-generating agencies, yes, you are supposed to generate the revenue for government.
Not for yourself.
Not for yourself, So it's about systems. First, if you use more technology, it will help to reduce corruption. If you reduce discretionary powers, because sometimes some of these officers have the powers to determine one way or the other, which can put a lot of burden on those people who are in business. So if somebody has so much powers,
Absolute power, absolute corruption.
then it creates room for corruption because he can wield the power either way. And in order for you to get him to wield the power in your favor or to exert the discretion in your favor, sometimes you are compelled to do something. You know, that is one. Then secondly, you need a very sound and credible dispute resolution system. Because in the whole system, if you have an issue, if you have a grouse, there's no credible dispute resolution system.
You have to make people happy for you to get out of it.
Yes. But if you have an independent body that you can escalate your matters to.
And there's a standard.
That's a standard that is clear to everybody. Some of these things will reduce.
All right,
so these
Dr.
are some
Muda.
of the reform initiatives that needs to happen.
All right, Dr. Muda. Now, the International Monetary Fund is asking the federal government to remove official exchange rates. I know that's one of the areas you really like to talk about, but we'll take a break now. When we come back, we'll have that conversation. So do stay with us. It's Business Morning on Channels Television. The conversation continues after this break. You're welcome back. You're still watching Business Morning on Channels Television, and we're discussing facilitating international trade, especially following the proposal by the CBN to introduce E-Invoicing and E-Evaluator. We have Dr. Muda Yusuf here, the CEO of CPPE, for this conversation. So just before we went to that break, we're talking about the IMF asking the federal government to remove official exchange rate. And I know that's even one of the reasons for this E-Invoicing, like you've said, is people seem to be taking advantage of the weakness in the system to get out more foreign exchange. So does it follow, or is that, would you say, one of the reasons? How do we connect that to IMF asking us to remove the official
You see, one of the biggest incentives for over-invoicing is the fact that you have a subsidized foreign exchange. In the official window, exchange rate is about 416.
Yes.
In the parallel market, it's about 570. You can see the gap. So if you are smart enough, in quote, to move $1 million from the official window to the parallel market window, you are talking about...
You're a millionaire.
100 million, over 100 million straight away.
Without any hard work.
Yes, if you have the connection or the... But that is, of course, illegal.
Of course, obviously.
But the incentive has been created for that to happen. So when people see that kind of incentive and you make that kind of money, which is even much more than the profit you will make.
Doing a normal business, adding value to the real sector.
Bringing the raw materials.
Going through the trouble of overhead costs.
Overhead costs, the port problem, buying diesel, selling it. You can't make that kind of profit. So the issue is that some of these problems that we are trying to solve are actually symptoms of a much deeper problem or challenge. And the fundamental issue is that when you have a subsidy environment, you are bound to have these kind of problems. If you do not address the cause of the problem, and you think that you can begin to police people around, you cannot achieve much. It's just like saying that I want to stop smuggling of petroleum products. If you line up all the security agencies around the country, you can't stop it.
They'll get their share.
Yes, because the incentive is too much. So the point here, and I'm connecting it to now this issue of invoicing, is that if you have an exchange rate that eliminates or drastically reduces the premium between the official window and the parallel market window, a lot of these abuses.
But is that possible? Is that possible? I know we've talked about what's the true value of Naira, and if it's left to float, some of the consequences it will have, you know, on the currency and the economy.
What consequences? Exchange is already 570. Can it be worse than that? Certainly not. But the point is, if you want this economy to function very well, that is the way to go. Some of the IMF propositions, some of them may not be socially feasible or politically feasible, like issues of petroleum subsidy.
That, yeah.
That may be difficult. But the issue of the unification of the exchange rate, even the government has even indicated that that is what they want to do. It's contained, it was in the ERGP, the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, in the document. It's also even in this the new development plan. It's an objective of government. Yes. It's a macroeconomic objective that you have to unify the exchange rate. But for some reasons,
maybe we're not ready for it yet?
Well, the CBN has been reluctant for whatever reasons. And that has been creating a lot of problems. One, it's creating this problem of over-invoicing because a lot of people are now in the official window because they want to take advantage of this premium. Secondly, it also reduces the incentive for people to bring in capital into the economy. Because if you are bringing in capital officially, you have to bring it in or the official rate.
Yes.
And if the foreign investor or the portfolio investor knows that there's a parallel market rate of 570, you are talking of a premium of close to 50%. They won't bring the money. Or if they bring it, some of them may even again resort to all these under-the-table things. That is why at the time, even the CBN were running after the embassies, running after all sorts of people,
yes,
that they were not bringing in their funds through the normal channel. It's a policy problem. So if we are running an economy where we say that we need a lot more foreign exchange, apart from oil, you need to make sure that this rate is also right.
So what do you think?
So apart from the demand issue,
yeah, there's a supply.
It's also creating a supply problem because it's blocking people from bringing in money because we need investors. And it is this investor that will bring in the foreign exchange, apart from oil. So if there is no appropriate pricing of the foreign exchange, then they will not bring it in.
What do you think would be an appropriate price?
The issue is not about appropriate. The market will determine it.
Isn't that
now we have two prices.
Yes.
And there are two extremes.
It's very extreme.
We have one 570, you have one 416. So even if we have it in the middle at around 500, is that not still better for this economy? And you have more liquidity in the system. Right now, there's no liquidity in the official window. Because you have more demand than supply.
Our foreign reserve is now less than $40 billion.
Yes, yes. Of course, a lot of things is happening. But if you have a much better mechanism of dealing with these effects, which is part of the thing the IMF is saying, just that the IMF also have, there's some perception around IMF recommendations because people see it as anti-people, anti-this and anti-that. But we need to also look at it, we distill it. We pick what can work and what cannot work. Because sometimes the IMF also come with recommendations that may not be socially feasible. Because they are not also very conversant with the context in which we are operating. Because even for any policy, there has to be a social context. There is a political context. Sometimes there's even cultural that you have to take into account before you impose a policy on the people. These contextual issues are often not reckoned with by the IMF. But it is the responsibility of the economic managers to look at all these options and see what can work and what cannot work. And, try to do things better.
But, we've had a lot of CBN intervention, in recent times. And a lot of people have said that, we're actually seeing some fruits from the interventions.
It depends. We are talking about development finance. That's a completely different thing. The issue of FX is of a greater systemic importance than development finance. Because the issue of FX cuts across practically all aspects of the economy. And if you don't get it right, it has a systemic effect affecting all sectors. The interventions are essentially about agri, about manufacturing, pyramid, and all these things. That is what the interventions are all about. They are sector-specific. And they are more, of course, they are having some impact. But again, there is a debate as to whether that is the appropriate way to do it. There's a debate as to whether we are getting value for all the intervention. There is a conversation around the high rate of default and all of that. But we can't take away the point that it has brought some value into the system, at least to manufacturing and to agriculture. But of course, it can be done better.
Yeah, I mean, I think I spoke to, was it the manufacturer? So they have some special windows where the CBN is trying to make it easier for them to access, you know, FX.
No, there was a request. You know, the Manufacturers Association visited the president and raised concern about access to FX.
Aviation also has that issue.
Well, aviation, I think, has some concession around import duty and all of that, some waivers around that. But again, we cannot be picking and choosing. We should make the entire system work for everybody. Manufacturing is important. Other sectors too are important. What is important is to have a policy that works well for everybody. Whether you are in manufacturing, whether you are in ICT, whether you are even in broadcasting. You also need equipment. You need to import some equipment that are not produced. How do you also access your forex? So every sector is bringing one value or the other to this economy. So we need a macroeconomic environment that will work for everybody. So that is why we are talking about normalizing this. The development finance is good. But again, we have to make sure that it works well, because I know that even many of the commercial banks, sometimes when they talk about this development finance, many of them are not too excited about it.
A lot of them say they can't access it?
No, they are worried about the risk. Because, I mean, as a bank.
Okay, as a bank.
Yes, if you lend the money.
Because some of the benefactors say it's difficult to access some of those.
Yes, sometimes it can be very difficult, especially for the small businesses.
Yeah.
It can be very difficult because, again, for many SMEs to meet some of those things, the requirements can also be difficult. But you cannot deny the fact that some people are beneficiaries of it. But, again, it can work better than what is. We can reduce the default rate. We can make the system work better, because right now, even the commercial banks are not able to function properly in their role as financial intermediaries. Because the purpose of banking is financial intermediation. So rather than be waiting for the CBN intervention funds, the banks must be able to interface with the business community straight away.
Are you going to the point of the CRR? Funds? Is that what you're talking about?
Of course, it's part of it.
I think 2 banks got fined some days ago because they didn't meet up with their CRR.
Effective CRR for some banks is over 50%. So how will they function as a bank? The essence of banking is to mobilize resources from the surplus end of the economy to the deficit end of the economy. That is what banking is all about. But when you have taken away all their money, then what are they going to be doing? Then they'll be looking for commission on FX, doing this, doing that. That is what is left.
Trying to meet up with the catch-up cover-up.
So those are the things. We need to make the system work a lot better.
Okay, Doctor, just before we let you go now, you talk about policy. I'm talking of FX now, which is the point that we're settled on. And you said perhaps looking at the range, the 2 parts, where the prices are in the parallel and the official window now, if they meet in the middle, do you think that if the CBN wakes up today and say, okay, this is the unified rate, do you think it will automatically make everything come to like an arranged or an agreeable status?
It will have a substantial impact. It may not eliminate all the problems, but it's going to have a substantial impact in stabilizing the macroeconomic environment. It's going to encourage a lot more inflows. It's going to reduce pressure, even on the CBN, for demand for forex. Because some characters that are demanding for the forex in the official window are not actually business people. There are people who also want to take advantage.
Round trip.
Round trip. That's why the CBN is worried about this over-invoicing. So rather than be worrying about the over-invoicing, why not deal with the price and normalize the rate and make sure, very important, that we ensure that we also moderate money supply. Because if you don't check money supply,
that's also another.
The exchange rate will continue to depreciate, which is part of the challenges we are facing. When we have this problem of inflation, exchange rate is a major factor in it. And part of the reason we are having these pressures around inflation, around exchange rate, is also the explosion in money supply. So we need to keep our tap on it. Not necessarily by clamping down on the banks all the time for CRR, but we should also look at how the CBN itself is financing deficits. That is also contributing to inflation. So it's both a fiscal and monetary policy thing. Because the fiscal authorities are putting too much pressure on the CBN to be financing the deficit.
And that brings more money to circulation.
Highly inflationary. In fact, in economics, we even call it inflation tax. It's a tax on the people. But the people will not know. Because they are not seeing anybody going around. But it's an inflation tax. It's even worse than removal of subsidy. Yes.
All right, Dr. Mude Yusuf, the economy will always be of great concern to us, and at least we'll keep talking about it and hope that one day, at least, the conversation will change. Meaning that we're making progress.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation, Dr. Mude Yusuf, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.